Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to a look at some of the news that's been doing the rounds over the last few days, including the latest on the coronavirus from an F1 perspective. And that is where we are going to start. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware by now, there are some serious doubts over whether or not the start of the 2020 F1 season will go ahead as planned as the world continues to fight the coronavirus outbreak. However, Australian Grand Prix organisers have said that the race will kick the season off next week, and Bahrain Grand Prix officials have also said that they are confident its preparations will result in a successful and safe Grand Prix later this month. Back to Australia for a moment though, and Australian Grand Prix Corporation CEO Andrew Westacott stated, "We are all systems go and gearing up for the 25th Formula 1 race in Melbourne next week. The finishing touches are being put on the circuit, Formula 1 freight and personnel are arriving in the coming days, and we are looking forward to opening the gates to the public on Thursday the 12th of March. The health and safety of everyone at the Australian Grand Prix is paramount. The corporation has robust health, safety and emergency management arrangements in place at each event, and we are working with health agencies and related government and emergency service organisations in addressing this matter. We continue to closely monitor the situation in the lead up to the Grand Prix and are taking guidance from subject matter experts. At this stage, there is no indication of further travel bans, nor is there any indication that Formula 1 and the teams will not be arriving as usual." It should also be noted that he went on to add that F1 have confirmed that everything is still going ahead as planned. Although Australia is, at time of recording, that is a statement that must be made. So although everything is all systems go their end, and Bahrain are confident of the same, new doubts have been raised over the running of the Vietnam Grand Prix next month, after the country announced some new travel restrictions. So, the new measures mean that anyone travelling from China, South Korea, Iran or Italy will have to enter a 14-day quarantine period, and that is something which could have some serious implications for Ferrari, AlphaTauri and Pirelli, among others. In Barcelona, Mattia Binotto was asked about the coronavirus and what impact it could have on the team, and he basically said that it was a case of making sure the situation is managed properly and that they will continue to work closely with the FIA to work out any potential issues. So, China has already been postponed, and there are doubts over Vietnam. That would mean, should the race in Hanoi end up being called off, we could be left with a gap of 6 weeks between the checkered flag falling in Bahrain and lights out in the Netherlands on May the 3rd. And there are more than a handful of people out there who do believe that Australia, Bahrain and Vietnam will all be called off, and that's regardless of the reassurances given by the race organisers, and that could mean that the race in Zandvoort becomes the season opener. However, at this stage, that is just pure speculation, and the official line is that everything is going ahead as planned. But obviously we have to wait and see what decisions are made regarding the opening races of 2020. Right now, I suspect Australia will probably go ahead, but even though we are only 10 days away from FP1, things could still change very easily and there are no guarantees. As for Bahrain and Vietnam, to be honest, who really knows? As Christian Horner and Sebastian Vettel both said during testing, the situation is almost literally evolving by the hour, and things could again change very quickly. And I will add to that by saying that the race organisers and F1 and whoever can say what the hell they want. But at the end of it all, it'll be the local governments who will be the ones who effectively make the final call. If, for argument's sake, the Australian government turned around tomorrow and said, no one's coming in, that's it, we're closing the borders, then the race is off. There's nothing F1 can do, nothing the organisers can do. And yes, before you say it, I know that is probably right to the extreme end of the scale, but you kind of get the point I'm making. It's not up to F1, it's up to each individual country and the powers that be. Obviously, if no further restrictions are put in place, it is up to F1 and the organisers. I'm also interested to know what F1 would do if, let's say, the event in Hanoi goes ahead, but Ferrari and AlphaTauri aren't able to take part due to the restrictions around travel from Italy. Would that race still be run? I've had a look through the rules and there's nothing really specific to that situation. But Article 5.7 of the sporting regulations state, an event may be cancelled if fewer than 12 cars are available for it. So if Ferrari and AlphaTauri were to miss the race in Hanoi, the grid would still consist of 16 cars, and so in theory, the Grand Prix could still go ahead. Here's the thing though, with it not being the team's fault, I can see the race being called off if all 10 teams can't make it to the circuit. Ferrari and AlphaTauri will be frustrated if they miss out on the chance to pick up any points that in AlphaTauri's case could be crucial in that midfield fight, could be worth millions of dollars. And as silly as it might sound on the face of it, you've also got to think about the engine regulations. If those two teams miss a race or even multiple races, Others are probably going to be pretty miffed, let's say, that they've had to put their power units and gearboxes through more strain. What I mean by that is, let's say Ferrari as an example, they might not have to take any penalties that year because they've missed, let's say, for argument's sake, 3 races. Of course, you could flip that over and then argue that the fact they've missed those races leaves them at far more of a disadvantage than an engine penalty. But you know what F1 teams are like on stuff like this, and there'll be a load of complaining either way. Honestly though, if any team can't make a Grand Prix, I fully expect that event to be called off. And by the way, whilst I'm looking at the rules and for those wondering, Article 5.4 says that currently the maximum number of events in the championship is 22 and the minimum is 8. It is also worth a quick mention, and I guess this is speculation, but if there were any further postponements, I would expect them to end up as full cancellations in the end. The calendar is packed after the summer break, and trying to reschedule the Chinese Grand Prix is already proving challenging. So there is no way I can see F1 being able to squeeze 2 or 3 more races into that calendar without cancelling the summer break and possibly even extending the season up to Christmas, and that's something the teams are never going to be on board with. But that is the latest at time of recording. As I've already said, the situation is evolving and things could easily change overnight. So I guess watch this space. But as things currently stand, the first 3 races of 2020 are officially set to go ahead as planned. I'm not so sure though. I'm just sliding back in here at this point to give a quick update. Whilst I've been editing, Chris Medland on Twitter has shared a post saying that the government in Bahrain are apparently now preventing entry to all foreign nationals who have visited Italy, Iraq, China, Hong Kong, Iran, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia and South Korea 14 days prior to travelling to the country. So Ferrari and AlphaTauri and others based in Italy, I believe would have to leave for Australia now, and then after that race wouldn't be allowed to arrive in Bahrain until the Wednesday prior to the Bahrain Grand Prix. It would also mean that they wouldn't be able to have a stop off in places like, for example, Hong Kong or Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia on their way to Vietnam. This is all getting a little bit messy, isn't it? From an F1 perspective. I must stress that this is all from an F1 perspective. I know, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't the be-all and end-all, and health and safety is absolutely paramount, but this is an F1 channel, so I have to look at it from that point of view. And you know, once again, this is proof that this is just a constantly evolving situation, and as I say that, F1 have said that they are working with the promoter and local authorities on possible solutions to this whole 14-day quarantine period in Vietnam that has been imposed on people travelling from Italy. Do you know, I'd even go as far now as to say I suspect Australia will go a headline earlier was perhaps a little bit ambitious. Look, I think the best thing for me to say at this point, because this is something that could keep evolving and I could keep adding things to this part of the video, probably all day, quite frankly. So the best thing to say right now is just watch this space. Looking elsewhere though, and Ferrari boss Mattia Binotto has admitted that the team could switch focus to 2021 early if they feel the gap between them and the front of the grid is too big to close. Lots of emphasis on the word could there. I think it's fair to say that the Scuderia have been unusually open about their problems, and they have admitted that they are behind their main rivals already, with Binotto previously stating that they will not be able to compete with Mercedes in Melbourne, and he even hinted back in Barcelona that Racing Point could be a possible threat to them in the early stages of 2020. The team boss, though, despite his concerns, says that it is still very early days, and that they will be sticking to their current plan, but that could all change. Right then, if you were with us for the testing streams, you'll already have heard this, but for those who didn't or couldn't tune in, I do not believe this for 1 second. Since when have Ferrari been willing to talk themselves down to this extent? Do I think they will arrive in Australia as the team to beat? No, not at all. But equally, do I believe that they are more than half a second off the pace? Not for 1 moment. And yes, I'm fully aware that statement could well come back to bite me on the backside quite hard in around 2 weeks' time. By the way, that half a second gap is a number that comes from the experts, people you know who are able to work these things out far better than I ever could. The point is, you can never really believe a word that comes out of teams' mouths around testing. They are all part of the mind games that make this time of year so intriguing. My gut feeling, though, is that Ferrari are playing things down massively so that when they arrive in Melbourne as the third fastest, perhaps only a couple of tenths off the pace, things don't appear to be all that bad, if you like. So if you think back to last year when they were apparently favourites, suddenly third fastest looked like an absolute disaster. However, if you play your chances down and then you do better than that, you look like absolute heroes. That's my take anyway. It's probably an absolutely terrible take, but I'm not falling into that testing trap again this year. Moving on, and Gene Haas has said that the team's start to the 2020 season will determine whether or not they remain in F1 beyond the end of this year. Of course, Haas entered F1 back in 2016 and were clear that if they were going to stick around, they would have to be competitive. They did, I think it's fair to say, initially start very well and ended up finishing 5th in the Constructors' Championship in 2018. However, following a very poor 2019 season which saw them plummet to 9th in the standings, there were already some question marks about the team's long-term future. But speaking to motorsport.com on Sunday, Haas said that he is waiting to see how the season starts and went on to say that if we have another bad year, then it would not be that favourable to stay. I'm not saying we won't be back. It has to be evaluated. To do it for another 5 years, though, that would be a big commitment. He also raised concerns, as many of the midfield teams are, over how much the regulation changes for 2021 were going to cost, adding, "There's so much change going on in Formula 1. You really have to ask yourself, is it really going to be worth the expense to try to implement all these changes? I know everyone thinks the changes are good, but they are expensive." You can, by the way, find a link to the article and indeed links to all the stories featured today in the description down below. And finally, for the news stuff anyway, it was a much better showing during 2020 winter testing for Williams than it was back in 2019. I think we can all agree on that one. For one, they turned up on time. But despite a couple of those power unit related issues, they did some very good mileage, and on the face of it at least, look as though they have closed the gap to the midfield, and some might even argue that they have a slight advantage over Haas at the moment. I'm not so sure though. Claire Williams, however, is confident that they have taken strides forward, and speaking on the final day of testing, Williams said that she is feeling a lot happier, probably inevitably. It won't come as a surprise to anyone. Things at Williams have definitely taken a step forward, but that's off the back of a lot of hard work that everybody in the team has done over the last 12 months to ensure that that was the case. We all know that we've still got a lot of hard work to do to achieve our ultimate goals, which is to get Williams back to where we want to see it. That's podiums and race wins, but that reality is way off. This year, the target is to make clear progress. So Claire is confident that the team are on the up, but what do you guys think? Bearing in mind that it is pretty much guesswork as testing means basically nothing in the grand scheme of things, what do you think the running order is as F1 heads to Melbourne? Not your championship predictions, but what order you think teams are in now on pace? You can, as always, let me know your list in the comment section down below, and yes, I will let you know mine too. So for me, I think we're looking at Mercedes as the team to beat again, but I really do think that Red Bull will end up second in Melbourne and could even be challenging for the win. They looked very solid, and the fact they were backing off across the line shows that they have some confidence in their own pace. Ferrari, as I've already said, I don't believe they're as far off the pace as they're making out, but I also don't think they are quite on the pace of the top two I've picked, so third for them. I've put Racing Point in fourth because they are running a copied version of the W10, let's be honest here, and so I think they could start the season in a very strong position, but they will not be there come the end of the season. More on that in a later video though. Fifth place, Renault or McLaren. Sixth place, McLaren or Renault. I really can't call this. Both teams were quiet during testing, in a good way, and I think that can be taken as a sign of confidence. Renault are definitely quicker, in my view, than perhaps many are expecting, but you cannot discount McLaren either. They made big steps forward last year, and they're going to be a threat. So fifth and sixth for them in some order. Cop out right there, I guess. But if you're going to twist my arm and I had to pick right now, perhaps Renault have just got the edge as we approach Australia. Behind that, though, 7th place AlphaTauri, 8th place Alfa Romeo. I've put Haas in 9th and Williams in 10th place, but that back four are so hard to pick. Again, I do still think that Williams will be 10th, but they are almost certainly closer than last year. I mean, they couldn't exactly have been any further away, but there you go. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now, but don't forget you can let me know your running order down in the comment section. And very quickly before I disappear, I do just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to everyone who joined us for the testing streams over the last 2 weeks. They were so much fun to do. Even if I did end up on random topics, they were still great to do, and I did honestly enjoy them. So thank you so much. Also, a massive thank you to everyone for your awesome messages, tweets and emails regarding my brief voiceover cameo, if you like, in Season 2 of Drive to Survive. And yes, it was all arranged beforehand, so no, they didn't steal the audio, don't worry. But it is good to know that you're all keeping an eye out for stuff like that, and you will let me know if you spot things, so thank you, but it was all legit. But anyway, I am really off this time, so thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all again soon. Bye-bye.